Hello and welcome to another episode of Allo and Ace podcast. I am the allosexual Skylar.
And I'm the asexual Jessie.
Hey, Jessie.
Hey, Skylar.
This is a sexual podcast where we talk about sexual things. Trigger warning. With that, we may discuss other sensitive items around sexuality and sex and self-harm, SA, and the like.
Those things don't always get brought up, but we do like to say that just in case they do because, well, I think by this point you know that we end up talking about whatever naturally just comes up. Also, we're not professionals. I know it might seem like it at times. I'm just kidding. We're not professionals. We talk about our personal experience being in this mixed orientation marriage as an asexual and allosexual couple. So, yeah, if you need professional help, please seek that out. There are a lot of wonderful therapists out there.
You have one yourself, don't you, Jessie?
I do. She's so great. And I don't know if she listens, but you know who you are.
We also love getting messages from all of the listeners, and we have a variety of ways in which someone can reach out to us, including if you want to text message or, leave a voicemail, you can do so at area code in the US 385-645-3651.
I feel like you could throw a rock and reach us, honestly, because I feel like there's so many ways to reach us.
Yeah, we are on most of the socials, as well as if you want to send an email, you can do so to alloandacepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. So please do, because we absolutely love it. Like we say, every single episode.
Yeah. Jessie, how's it going?
My heart was just like, oh, here we go.
Now, it's been a couple weeks.
It has. And there's a reason for that.
I would love to know this reason.
Just big sigh. There's just been a lot that's happened in the last couple of weeks. And sometimes when a lot has happened, there's more processing and more communication, more discussions being had between Skylar and I before we feel like we can really get a good discussion with everyone else around it, right?
Yeah, and we do have, and in the meantime, we are also thinking of other future episodes, and
yeah,
I might post something on Instagram that triggers a thought of oh, I wonder if we could do a whole episode on this topic that I posted about.
Right, and also we won't record unless we feel it, unless we're feeling it, because we want to be in it, in the moment, and invested in what we're saying. And so if we're just not quite there, then we won't do it. So know that every episode we've recorded, we've been very, very excited to get it recorded. And we know what kind of vibe or impact we want to be having.
Yeah, and we've done other podcasts in the past, or I've done podcasts in the past, and sometimes if you feel like you have to release every week, then, sometimes you're not putting out your best episode you could have.
Well, and it just might not be as genuine.
Sure.
So, yeah, here we are. I just realized that you asked me how I was doing, and we literally didn't even.
We just were skip over that.
Skip over that.
Well, what I was saying was it's been 2 weeks, so there's a lot that could have happened for your response.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like it's been a wide range of emotions over the last 2 weeks with a lot of different experiences happening. I've been very nervous, excited, anticipating talking about some of the things we're going to talk about today. But overall, I'm in good spirits right now. I'm going to be honest, we have a really, really busy week ahead, especially I do.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit on the edge of my seat with that, but I'm so excited to talk through these things tonight on this episode.
Yeah, and there are, a few, I would say, revelations with this episode that we wouldn't have had a year ago.
No way.
Or when we started this podcast. So.
No way. And they've been shocking. They've been shocking to me.
Yeah.
Like totally shocking.
So do we want to just jump right in?
Probably. So tonight's episode, this episode is...
Whenever you listen to this,
I would say this is more of a variety episode.
Yeah, and we've had a few, we've had a couple of those.
Right. And that happens when several things have happened and we're eager to talk about each of them. And so who knows, some of these things might evolve into needing their own episode later on. But for now, we wanted to at least touch the surface, scratch the surface with these things. And it'll be really interesting to see how someone might relate to it or what they get out of it.
I would say if this is your first time tuning in, you should probably start with episode 1. I'll probably say that more often. We do have an episode where you could certainly jump in at any time and get something from it, but we do tend to follow a journey, if you will, from episode 1 to now.
Yes. And I think by this point, everyone knows that Skylar and I we go with it. We don't rehearse things. We kind of fly by the seat of our pants. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of these conversations, there are some live reactions that can happen as we've witnessed in the past. So it really is a journey, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, we do talk a lot together about lots of things, but we don't have a script. We don't even have a plan really, and we just hit record and just start going.
Yeah, and I hope that that's well received. I hope that you can tell that it's pretty much raw. So, why did that feel awkward? No.
We just raw dog this podcast.
Ew, why? Guys, forgive him for what he says. Should we get into it?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to keep that in, aren't we?
It sounds like you want to.
Okay, well, we will. Just because, that's real. Okay, anyway. So we started this podcast in April. And as things have unfolded, I started off feeling like I was very hopeful that I might be a sex favorable asexual. And then I had to come down from that hill a little bit or go up the hill more. I don't want it to sound like it's a bad thing, but I had to do some more discovery. And I was like, oh, I'm indifferent. I'm definitely indifferent. We're going to be great. It's fine. We're fine. Everything's fine. Then to just realize, actually, no, I'm averse. I am averse and even possibly at times repulsed by sexual acts. But I would say more so averse, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I haven't heard any dry heaving or crying of even the thought or, anything like that.
In like a disgusted way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, wincing from my touch or something, because you're having like a huge body reaction of
right. It definitely,
repulsivity.
It comes from feeling unnatural. Like it just feels unnatural. It has feelings of being violated. So, I mean, my aversion, and this is one of these ahas in the last couple of weeks, I would say my aversion has 2 main components.
Can I pause you real quick? Interject something?
Go ahead, interject.
We just want to also remind everyone that this thought or these thoughts and experiences, they relate to us. They may not be the same for everyone.
Yeah.
They might not be the same for your partner if you're an allosexual, and it might not be the same as you yourself feel as an asexual.
Yeah, this is actually really, really important that you're saying this.
Because our experience isn't everyone's experience. And Jesse's experience isn't everyone's experience. So
yeah,
we share these and these vulnerabilities so that you can start your own thought process and your own conversation about it in your own relationship or to yourself or by yourself.
Right. So going back to the averseness, as we tried to have sex since April or whatever in the last year or so, it just got worse and worse. It got more traumatizing, more averse, more emotional,
Yeah,
panic attacks.
I would say originally when you came out as asexual and you thought that you were more indifferent at a base to favorable,
Mm-hmm.
you were still like around ovulation time.
Yeah.
You were like, yeah, okay, sure.
My body is saying this. Yeah.
And then January, the one time in January, it was fine. And then it was the time in April and July.
Whenever they were.
Those were
I don't remember.
Those were the two that were really rough. And then that's when sex was taken off the table, if you will.
Right. So pretty strong reactions. And so over the last 2 weeks, there have been some things, random things that I've read that kind of made my curiosity start peaking to where, like, what part of it is actually bothering me? Okay. Is it the thought of Skylar being inside of me? Is that bothering me? I'm trying not to be too graphic, but obviously we talk very real at the same time. And I mean, I think maybe sometimes there are parts of that, but not really. It felt more emotionally driven, or
well, because going back, I don't know, 4 or 5 episodes ago, you talked about me going down on you and how that was indifferent and very mechanical. And
yes, it didn't feel sexual.
Yeah.
Which I know is so crazy that it didn't feel sexual. We'll get into that in a little bit. But so I tried to start unraveling that, and I thought, I wonder if it would make a difference if it was in a different position where it feels disconnected, where it doesn't feel so intense and like it's supposed to be passionate, and where it doesn't feel so in your face that you're having this sexual encounter with a sexual person, or, you know, an allosexual, I should say. So I thought, okay, when Skylar and I participate in a certain substance every once in a while, I don't like this particular position because it doesn't feel connecting. On that substance, I want to see Skylar's face and look in his eyes, and it feels connecting. Sex doesn't even feel like sex on that substance, as you've heard us say before. So the thought was, okay, if this feels disconnecting on this substance, I wonder if it would feel disconnecting, just normal.
Yeah.
So that's where my brain really started going. And that position is doggy style. I don't know why I have to say it that way. I don't know why I feel it's so embarrassing to say. Why do I feel like it's so embarrassing?
I don't know. It also sounds like the French fries or the burger.
That's animal style.
In and out.
I think it feels like it's like juvenile to be like doggy style, you know? Yeah. I don't know. So
from behind.
From behind, yes. More specifically on all fours. I don't know why I feel like I have to say that, but here we are. Anyway, so the thought crossed my mind. I wonder if I tried having sex with Skylar in doggy style position from behind, and it was quick, and there was no foreplay, no passion. You just get in and get out, you know? And I know that sounds so romantic. No, but that's the whole point.
Why do I feel like we should, anytime that happens, we just turn on closing time?
Closing time. Yeah. Anyway, so, I mean, I'm having, I would say, little moments while I'm thinking this through of like, gosh, what a treat. What a fun time. Skylar, let's go. I'm on all fours. Make it quick. Do not even think of kissing my back.
Leave your socks on.
Leave your socks on. I don't want to hear nothing. Nothing's going on here. Okay. I mean, it makes, I felt bad. But I didn't feel bad enough not to try it.
And I want to clarify something. So people are like, but Skylar said sex is off the table. He's the one that actually took sex off the table. So doesn't that mean that he would say no to this?
Yeah.
And after I had said sex is off the table, my reasoning for saying that is I don't want to do anything. It's not even sex, actually. I don't want to do anything that you have to spend days and days talking yourself into trying to then just feeling violated.
Yeah.
But if you aren't trying to talk yourself into anything and you're like, oh, I haven't touched your penis with my hand for a year. I just want to try it real quick to see what it does. Nope, don't like that. Okay, cool. Like, not a big deal. But if you're like, for 2 days, I'm going to touch his penis. I'm going to touch his penis. This is fine. I got this.
That sounds so ridiculous, but that is exactly what is happening. Like, I should probably touch his penis. I'm going to try to touch his penis. At some point, I'm going to touch his penis. This is the most times we've said penis in this podcast.
Penis.
My gosh, no, but that is actually what is going on.
Is Beetlejuice going to come? A penis monster bust through the wall?
I almost just said penis juice, but I just did. So that's just disgusting. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, yeah. Penis crashes through like the Gatorade guy.
Oh, my gosh.
Reel it in.
We're reeling it in. Anyway, so with this thought, it didn't feel no, like right out the gate. It wasn't like no,
And you didn't have to talk yourself into it.
No, it was like, this is an interesting thought, and I think I feel indifferent.
Let's try it.
Let's go. So literally out of nowhere, right, Skylar?
Yeah.
I said, I want to try to have sex.
Well, I think you said, I want to try something.
I want to try something. And I made it very, very clear. I said, it needs to be quick. There needs to be no foreplay. There needs to be no passionate, sexually driven type things. You need to literally bone me quick and be done. Maybe I shouldn't say that. That sounds bad, but like, that's me coming out, guys. Sorry. That's how I am responding to this. So we do it. And it was so amazingly disconnected.
5 seconds later, I was like, how was it?
Exactly. In and out, baby. So we did this. We tried this. And I did have my vibrator. And there is importance to this.
There's a reason why it's being mentioned.
Yes, there's a reason it's being mentioned. I decided to have my vibrator, and that's fine. And it was quick. I mean, honestly, Skylar, what was it? A minute and a half?
Maybe, yeah.
A minute and a half, 2 minutes. And I flip back over after it's done. And I had a very small moment, right? Didn't I have a very small moment where I was like, I have a really small feel bad moment that this, how ridiculous is that it looks like this, like that you don't get to have passionate sex, right? Yeah. But it was so fleeting. The thought was so fleeting. And I was like, holy shit, I can't believe we just did this. And I'm okay.
Well, and the thing is like, that was the same thing for me going down on you. You didn't know how you were going to feel.
No.
But you're like, I want to try this. I want you to do this. I don't want you to do this with it.
Nope. And it needs to be like this. And it was fine. It was indifferent. Okay. Yeah. It was indifferent. It wasn't favorable. It was indifferent. It was nothing. And I know that probably sounds harsh, but that's just the way that it was. But that's what it needed to be.
Yeah.
For me. So we did this 3 times total in like
6 days.
A 6-day period, maybe. And was it the second or third time that it was the third time. It was the final time, huh?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So the second time that we tried it, after Skylar was done, he kissed my back. Wasn't it after?
I think it was after or before.
Oh, no. It was before. And immediately when Skylar kissed my back before getting into it, I did not like that. I was like,
No romance.
Okay. Okay. Then I was like, it's okay. We'll talk about it afterwards. It's going to be fine. I said that in my head. So then we got done quick. No romance, no foreplay. And it was fine, but afterwards I was like, hey, I can't have you kissing my back like that because it just feels uncomfortable to me. I really need it to be so mechanical and technical. It cannot.
And I think it was actually your shoulder, like the back of your shoulder blade.
Oh gosh, I felt like just my back. I don't know.
And the reason why I bring that up is because I can kiss her back all night long if I want to.
Yep. Yeah, and we've talked about how we pretty much naked cuddle every single night we naked cuddle.
Yeah.
But the thing is it's not sexual feeling. It doesn't feel sexual at all. It feels romantic. It feels intimate in a non-sexual way, and I know that there's no intention behind it. So that's the thing that happened the second time.
Well, because the intention, so the reason why we say there's no intention behind it, because it has never once, other than the second time you cried before sex was off the table, there was stuff that happened in the middle of the night, but that was, you were kind of leading that charge in your half-sleeped, dreamy state.
Yeah.
But before bed, when we're doing all this stuff, never once has it led to you being like, oh, I'm getting turned on by this. Let's try more.
Yeah.
It's like I do it for a while and then I'm like, okay, we're waking up at 5 a.m. So I need to go to bed.
Yeah. So that's how the second interaction went with this behind me sex. And the third interaction was very different. So that the first and second interaction, I had used the vibrator and it didn't feel averse at all. And then on the third interaction, for whatever reason, I decided, I'm going to try a different flavor of this and see what happens. And I chose to, was that a big smack?
Nope.
Okay. I thought I smacked my lips in the microphone. Sorry, everyone. On the third interaction, I chose to use my hand for myself instead of the vibrator. And it was not a good idea. But there was another thing that happened right before we were getting started with it. I said, I want to try this again. And Skylar had been in a position on me, like fully clothed, where he was kind of on top of
missionary position.
Yeah, but we weren't doing anything.
You were scratching my back.
Oh, I was scratching his back. Yeah, so he was kind of laying on top of me, fully clothed, and I was scratching his back.
Because I'll give her, back tickles and rub her, body and this and that, and then, every other day or whatever, she'll be like, motion me to come lay on top of her so that she can like rub my back.
Yeah. So he was kind of in that position, but he had gotten up a little bit. So he was sitting up, and then I said, I think we should try again.
You said we should have sex.
We should have sex. And still feeling indifferent to it. And at this point I'm like, I really want to test this boundary out. This is really fascinating to me.
And the thought in my head was, oh crap. Because before it was said differently. And so then when we were in this position where essentially I'm in missionary position and you said, yeah, but let's have sex. My thought process was like, oh crap.
You were like, oh crap, how's she going to react to this?
Yeah, are you trying a new thing?
No, so Skylar.
So I wanted to clarify and be like.
Skylar didn't say, oh crap to me though.
No, in my head.
What Skylar said to me was, what position do you want to do? And immediately I was like, in my head, I was like, what are you talking about? Why would you even ask that? You know the position that's possible. Like in my head, I started spiraling because I was like, well, he wants to try a different thing. I don't know if I can. I don't know. Am I okay with that? Am I ready for that? I don't think I want to do that. I almost talked myself out of doing anything because he said, what position? And so that was a really big learning moment of like, no, this is actually really sensitive. This needs to be executed in a very specific way if it's going to be executed. Right.
But also I think for the partner who has the boundaries, who has the sensitivity around this stuff, they should be clear on what they're saying. Like make it very specifically clear.
I mean, I guess I had assumed that you would know that it
Yeah.
would be this way because we talked about how it feels disconnected.
Yeah, but that's why I was like, oh crap, in my head, because I'm like, oh, she's getting cocky or confident or something, where she's like, well, the last two were fine, so
I
let's
should be
change
fine.
it up.
I mean, I can see that.
Yeah.
So I didn't let him. I mean, I kind of was like, why would you say that? No, we just need to do it the way that we've done it the last 2 times.
And I was like, great.
Yeah. So I decided to use my hand, like I said, and I almost broke down afterwards. There were some eruption of some feelings going on, and what happened is I associate my hand in that way with my own personal time if I would like to help myself, okay? And not that, I mean, I consider my personal time to be in the shower, okay? And this is relevant to all of this for 2 reasons. These situations, when we're trying to figure them out, are incredibly sensitive, and something that doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal can be a deal breaker. It can make you not want to try anything again for a very long time. And so I had these hard feelings come up, and then I figured out, oh, this is hard. I don't like this because my hand, I associate that with my own personal relationship with myself. And it felt too personal to me to be doing that to myself with my hand, with Skylar doing what he was doing. So this leads into the next, well, no, not quite. That will lead into the next thing we're going to talk about. But before we do that, I want to hear Skylar's experience with all of this, his side of the story, I guess you could say. But I also just want to say that these are tricky things, and I've been shocked that this was able to happen. I don't know when it will happen again, but I know that it was okay. And so if I feel indifferent to it again at some point, then I know that it might be a safe option. That does not mean that it will be a safe option for you as an asexual listening to this, as an averse asexual. But I think the biggest thing is just looking for little moments of, I'm more curious about this more than anything else. And do I feel indifferent with trying something?
Well, and the other thing with that is between the going down on you twice and this happening 3 times, it still doesn't mean that I can bring it up in a way of saying, hey, would you want to try this?
Right. Yeah. So with that being said, I want to hear your experience with this, Skylar, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I see quite a bit on the forums and in the, partners of asexual different kind of groups and stuff is the allosexual, and we talk about sexual compliance, we talked about, things like that, where sometimes the allosexual partner will be like, hey, if you can try to have sex on a schedule or something, then that would be great. And then they realize that after a couple times, when their partner isn't really into it or isn't desiring them in the way that they think this should be happening, then they lose interest in it and they go, oh, I don't want to do that because I'd rather be having sex with someone who actually wants to have sex with me. And so with this, the other part of it too is there could be this thought as an allosexual, like, if you haven't had sex for a while, this is going to be so awesome and an amazing thing.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this for so long.
And so you can, having it be like, oh, I need you to do this real quick and not, make any kind of romantic gestures and not try to get me turned on beforehand and this and that. And to be clear, like, lube is involved. This isn't just a,
No, we're safe with it. Come on.
we're not just going crazy. But my thought process has been, and if you've listened to this podcast, we've talked about how the whole Disneyland parking lot, or, the plain potato when I can have steak type of a thing, and we're vegan, so that's even worse to use. But this whole idea of any other intimacy being less than sexual intimacy, with us and our progress and the growth that we've had and the journey that we've had, where Jesse can when Jesse can trust my touch, and we are so connected daily, emotionally, romantically, and
incredibly affectionate.
And obviously there are people that doesn't apply to, who could be on the autism spectrum and don't like touch, or who are aro and are aromantic. But in our situation, where Jesse is ace but romantic and is not touch averse, we have a lot of connectivity that happens throughout the day, throughout our marriage, and at night.
Yeah, the intimacy bucket is full. I mean, if not spilling over a bit.
Yeah, and before Jesse came out as asexual, there were times where I did feel like a lack, because I was putting focus on the wrong thing. And so I was not allowing myself to be fulfilled on a intimacy level, because if it wasn't sex, I was throwing it out of the bucket, or I was not letting the bucket be full because I was waiting for it to be filled with sex, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And so when it would happen, I would make comments like, because in the past, Jesse at times would say, "Hey, I'm willing to have a quickie right now, but it needs to be from behind." And I'd be like, "Oh."
Which is interesting to look back on now.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'd be like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, I would,
because I'm like, I want to connect. I want to be face to face. I want to have this like interaction and the passion.
And I'm like, we connect all the time. What are you talking about? I just could not understand it, and he couldn't.
Yeah, and so for me, it would be a thing where I was tying a lot of connection to it, and so it was interesting where it's been a little while before we have had sex, especially not on a substance, and even more especially without it feeling like you're being violated. And so afterwards, I'm like, well, what is my thought on this? And I'm like, oh, my thought wasn't relief. My thought wasn't about time, or it's been so long and that felt so amazing and hallelujah. What it felt like was, oh, that was another activity that obviously, to me, sex feels great. And I will, outside of someone talking themselves into having to do it, I will never turn it down, because it's always going to feel good to have an orgasm, and it's always going to feel, great. So, but I didn't have any like strong emotional tie to it, in a sense of, wow, I can't believe, that we're not going to be in the sexless marriage anymore, and it's about time, and I can't believe that happened, and I can't wait for the next time. It was really just I feel so filled with all of the other stuff that we've been doing, that it was just another activity.
It didn't have the power that it did before.
It didn't have the power it did before.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, if we were open, if there was ethical non-monogamy happening, I might have those feelings with someone else, because they're possibly, like, if we were polyamorous or something, and I was in a romantic relationship with another person, I might have that type of connection with them, because that's a connection that we would utilize as a form of connecting on an intimate level. But right now, that's not happening, and the relationship that Jesse and I do have, we're not utilizing that as a way to connect on an intimacy level. So there was no lack, and therefore there was nothing to be filled by that happening.
Right. And I was having kind of a different response to that, like, whoa, this is a really big deal that that I'm able to do this. Like, this means that we don't have a sexless marriage, actually.
But that's because of the guilt that you carry.
So much guilt. So by me being curious about this and recognizing where this little gap of indifference is and where it could be a possibility, it's honestly lessened some of the guilt. And I know that the best thing to do would be to work through that guilt and release it, naturally. But I can't sit here and say that I didn't feel relieved by it. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this is possibly an option sometimes. And this doesn't mean that I'm like wanting to or okay with it all the time. No, but I was in a very curious state of mind. Like, let's go back to Poor Things, Emma Stone in Poor Things, a very curious state of mind of like, that's interesting. This feels this way when I do this.
Or looking at a specific fruit and being like, I wonder if that would work.
Yeah.
When she was at the dining room table.
Right. It's just a very curious mindset to be in, mixed with indifference. So it was like a perfect storm.
But it also doesn't mean that you'll ever want to do it again either.
Yeah, and I might not, but at least I know how I feel about it and that it might be a creative pathway to that.
Yeah.
So overall,
So it was kind of
Very
interesting because it was reverse reactions. Because your reaction was, thank God we're not in a sexless marriage.
because of the guilt I carry, yes.
And I was like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just want to say, like, I know the guilt that I carry for that and thinking, thank God, I understand that has aphobic feelings, and I'm trying so hard to work through that, but they surface, and that is real. That is what happens sometimes, and I want to work through them so badly. And most days I do pretty good, but self-hate is no bueno. It's not good. We don't.
For those that don't know Spanish, that means no good. Even though you just said no good, you're like, no bueno, no good.
Yeah, real smart, this one. So I acknowledge that and I own that. I am working through that. So with that being said, the next thing that kind of came up is I talked a bit about my personal relationship with myself.
In the shower.
Yes. And I didn't realize, I've always had some sort of an idea of just how personal I feel with that. I've never talked to Skylar about my thought process, really, or what happens exactly in the shower, how I do things, because I felt like it was just really personal and it could stay in my own brain, nice and safe. I can have that for myself. So this last week and a half or so, there was some outside resources or something that I randomly happened upon where it caused Skylar to be asking more specific questions about my personal time in the shower. And, he was like asking it started off with, when I'm going down on you, how much is it your thinking and your thoughts, and how much of it is me physically doing something? And I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe 50-50. And that felt okay. Like I was okay with that question. But then it started getting into my personal time.
Yeah. And part of this is my analytical brain, but unfortunately it makes Jesse feel like a scientific project, because some of it is curiosity of like, oh, as an asexual, like, what are you thinking about? What is the thing? Because it's interesting to think about what you might be thinking if you're not sexually attracted to people, and if you're horny and it's not aimed towards someone. It's kind of interesting.
I'm not even horny.
Yeah. Well, with libido, people do get horny, and you have libido, and
I know, but that's not the source of my own personal time. It's just not.
Sure. We've talked about how it was like stress and stuff like that.
Well, it's just like a thought in the shower of like, this will release these endorphins. And so that would be good to do. That's really the thought process. Very mechanical and technical and factual.
But yeah, having the thought process of like, oh, this is interesting to think about and possibly talk about. But At some point, it crosses a comfort line and
Right.
boundaries. And
So we were walking so cutely on a little morning walk, and Skylar starts asking me questions about my personal time in the shower for self-pleasure. And he starts asking me more like specific details of my thought process and what's going on in my brain and how much I think of him versus outside sources or just not him, I guess. And
I don't think you ever thought of me in there anyway.
I've tried.
No, I'm saying I didn't actually think that you did.
I know, but you were,
Yeah.
but you're getting specific with these questions, and
Yep.
I had a little bit of a mini panic attack. Like I couldn't breathe for a minute. I was like, "Why are you asking me these things? This is so personal. I feel like you are overanalyzing my personal thoughts that are very just intimate to me and my relationship with myself. You don't get to do that. That's so intrusive. I feel like you're playing a detective in my brain or something. It's the only thing that I have for myself. Please don't do that." And it was just this really interesting moment of, okay, I take this very seriously. You don't get to just ask me anything and everything at any time that you want. And unfortunately, I do, one of the things I struggle with is my experience is that you can feel quite like an alien in this world when you're asexual. And so Skylar poking and prodding at me.
Like an alien.
Exactly. I'm like, stop it. I don't need to be poked and prodded at like this. I'm not an experiment for you to dissect. You don't get to dissect me in this way. I get to keep my thoughts in my brain, and I get to keep them special to me. And so Skylar, when I started getting upset, I mean, he kind of doubled down a tiny bit. He was having a hard time why it would be so difficult for me to talk to him about it, because we talk about everything. But then I think you had some realizations that, why do I need to know that? That is not my business, right?
Yeah, I mean, my fascination doesn't automatically mean that
Grant you access.
grant access to it.
Yes, and also I do not ask you specifics on your own personal time either. So that got brought up, and he had more thought to it, and he was like, okay, actually. But you ended up looking something up from like the 70s on asexuals, which was actually quite modern and forward about how personal an asexual's experience with sexuality is to themselves.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was?
I don't, but it was from 1972, but it just said that something along the lines of an asexual's sexuality is not aimed at other people, and it's, personal to themselves or something. I would have to spend time Googling it. So
right. It feels incredibly personal to me. I don't feel like I need to share that with anybody, unless I would like to talk about it and bring it up. Right. So that's what that whole hand situation was when Skylar and I had the sex. It just felt like I was invading my own personal time when I decided to mimic it to a degree in a small way.
So here is the quote. It's actually from Lisa Orlando and Barbara Getz in 1972. They wrote the Asexual Manifesto. It says, "We chose the term asexual to describe ourselves because both celibate and anti-sexual have connotations we wish to avoid. The first implies that one has sacrificed sexuality for some higher good. The second, that sexuality is degraded or somehow inherently bad. Asexual, as we use it, does not mean without sex, but relating sexually to no one. This does not, of course, exclude masturbation, but implies that if one has sexual feelings, they do not require another person for their expression. Asexuality is simply self-contained sexuality."
Self-contained sexuality. That's interesting. Don't you think that's interesting? Self-contained sexuality.
Maybe we'll title this podcast episode that.
Self-contained asexuality?
Self-contained sexuality.
Sorry, self-contained sexuality. That's, I feel how that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to bring up something because I think I had a thought early on when you came out as asexual. No, actually, I want to say, because in the past, I knew that you would help yourself, in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be like, but if you are wanting to do that, why wouldn't you just want to have sex maybe?
Yep. Yeah. You made comments about that a lot, actually.
So there's this thing where allosexual people could have the thought of, well, if my asexual partner is masturbating, then clearly they want to have something happen. They want to release. So why wouldn't they just
involve
want me to help them? I have a hand. I have, I can hold the vibrator. I can use my mouth. I can use fingers. I can do whatever you want to have you have this experience, and it would be something that we can connect on. But that's the problem is that just because, and I don't want to speak for you, but you just essentially just talked about it. Just because I'm doing that doesn't, one, make it sexual to you, and two, doesn't mean that you want someone else involved. You don't need anybody's help. And if you want to release endorphins and dopamine and serotonin, you're going to do that however way you want to.
Right. It's so interesting because the moment I think about you being involved in that, it turns so sexual to me and feels so uncomfortable. But by myself, it just seriously does not feel sexual, which leads to the next thing. Did you want to say anything else to finish up what we were just talking about?
No, I think that it's just important as an allosexual partner to not take your asexual partner's sexuality away from themselves.
Yeah, and their autonomy.
Yeah, and their autonomy. You're not owed anything.
Yeah.
Just because Jessie is my partner doesn't mean that I have the right to be involved with her sexually, even if she wants to be involved sexually.
Yeah. Interesting. So the next and last thing that we wanted to talk about is something that got brought up. Was it yesterday or the day before?
I
feel like
yesterday.
It feels like it was yesterday, doesn't it? And it was this whole loop that Skylar and I got into of back and forth ridiculousness. I'm not going to lie. I did feel a bit triggered by it and had to come down a bit from it. So I had this aha of like, even when I'm engaged in sexual activity, it does not feel sexual to me. And Skylar says, yeah, but it is sexual. And I kept saying, but it doesn't feel sexual to me. Yeah, but it is sexual. And so I'd say, I understand that society views this act as a sexual act, but my personal experience is not sexual with it. And part of the reason it gets really uncomfortable for me is because I can feel how sexual it feels to you. And then I'm feeling uncomfortable because I know you're feeling sexual about it. And I definitely don't feel sexual, even though society says it's a sexual act, right? That was the whole thing.
Basically, any act in which stimulates any sexual organ to release an orgasm or to produce stimulation or feelings in your sexual organ would be defined as a sexual act.
Right. So I'm realizing that that's a hard thing for people to wrap their head around, that I don't consider it sexual feeling. It doesn't feel sexual to me. It feels like nothing, or it feels not great. It feels lame. It feels boring. It feels violating. It just does not feel sexual.
But if it feels mechanical, then there can possibly be some indifference to it, or even with yourself in the shower, it doesn't feel sexual. It feels mechanical. Or
it feels like I know that doing this and this makes this happen. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It feels like steps to be taken, and then this will be the result.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like this passionate or sexually driven thing. It just doesn't.
But even if the thoughts or the words are sexual in nature, it still doesn't feel sexual to you.
Yeah, and that's another interesting part. My body reacts to certain things. Well, maybe I should just... Have we ever talked about this?
No.
My body reacts to dirty words, okay? It just does. And it's not like a story. It's not like it reacts to a story. It literally just reacts to a single dirty word or a couple of dirty words put together. My body physically reacts to it. My body thinks that I am preparing to have sex if I read these dirty words or whatever. But that does not mean that my mind is like having an urge to have sex. I literally just have a physical reaction of my body saying, let's give some lube down here to have sex. I'm trying not to be graphic here, but
I think everyone knows what you mean.
probably. So I don't know why my body reacts to these words. And it's not even that I seek it. I don't even seek it. But I do know if I know my body reacts to these words and I do this a certain way, well then this is the outcome. But it still does not feel sexual to me.
Those words with this action will have a reaction. And
Yes.
so I'm going to use those words in that action because I know that that's going to have the reaction that I'm wanting, which is to have endorphins, serotonin, dopamine. Not that I actually want the physical feeling goodness of the orgasm in and of itself.
Right.
Like it's a benefit, but it's not the main reason.
It's just, yeah. So even then, even though I know my brain reacts to these words or my body reacts to these words, my brain is not in it to win it, everybody. It's just not. I don't know why that effect happens on my body, but it's just a physical response. I'm trying to think of something that's similar to that where you're just like, oh, my body's doing that, but I don't feel like doing anything about it.
Well, I think that you can think of something like someone brushing cement and it gives some people goosebumps and other people it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's not that you want goosebumps. It's just you can't help it.
Yeah, okay. That's actually not a bad one, I don't
Or
think. That's
rubbing styrofoam together.
Okay, we don't need to
Or the sound of brushing teeth.
We don't need to we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Let's not. So by talking to others, I guess it's actually a pretty interesting thing to wrap your head around the fact that I don't feel sexual when I'm doing a sexual thing.
And it is hard for an allosexual person to be like, but you are.
You are doing something sexual. Yes, but I don't experience it in a sexual way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And a lot of the loop on my end was like, but if we say this on a podcast, all the allosexual people are going to be like, but you are. But it is sexual because it involves your sexual organs and has a sexual reaction, which is an orgasm. So therefore, it is sexual.
And it doesn't mean I feel sexual.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what messages we get from asexual partners about this episode.
Yeah,
and the different things.
Okay, so here's what I want to know, if you're able to. If you are engaging in sexual acts because you are indifferent or favorable, do you feel sexual while you're doing it? Or do you have the same kind of response as like a mechanical or technical response where you know that this leads to a pleasurable experience? It's almost like, to me, it's like, it's pleasurable to eat a brownie with some ice cream.
God damn it.
I know. Why did I do that?
Why?
Should we get them?
No.
Probably should. But that you know, some people might view that as a sexual experience, but we know that it will lead to this pleasurable feeling, right? But that does not mean that you're viewing it in a sexual way. So I want to know, for the asexuals out there that do participate in sexual experiences, do you feel within you sexual when you're doing that? Or is it kind of like an activity that leads to a pleasurable feeling? So please reach out. so I can have a little bit more perspective on this from my own community, but also from the allosexuals out there. What are your thoughts on this? What is your experience with this, I guess? Do you feel super sexual while you're doing sexual things? That feels silly to even say that, but I don't know. I think we could get some interesting answers out of this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. It's been great tonight. I feel like we covered a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I'd say
It
so.
went fast.
Yeah.
Didn't it?
I think we have a possibly interesting episode for next week.
Yeah.
If I can build my thoughts around it.
Right. And if we're feeling it,
If we're feeling
we
it.
gotta feel it.
Yeah, Jesse's going to be, out of town for a while, and we got a big birthday bash this weekend for all the kids because we celebrate all 100 birthdays all on the same day.
Yeah, because we got 1 million kids.
So,
So anyway, thank you for listening. We appreciate you. We love you. Reach out over whatever platform you'd like to. And it's been great tonight.
yeah, hope you have a good one. And until next time.
Bye.